Michel Barnier last night claimed Britain had abandoned Europe as the continent faces repeated terror threats from Islamic State. The EU's chief Brexit negotiator cited recent attacks such as those in Paris and Brussels as a reason for members to stand shoulder to shoulder. But he said the British had chosen to be on their own again at a critical moment by voting to cut ties with Brussels. He said it was a decision that came just as the need to stand together was so strong, so manifest. Last night, UK officials accused Mr. Barnier of an extraordinary slur, admonishing his behaviour as irrational and stupid. His comments came despite repeated assurances by the Prime Minister that the UK will offer unconditional defence and security support in the aftermath of Britain's split with the EU. The timing of Mr. Barnier's intervention risks inflaming tensions with Downing Street as both sides edge towards an expected deal on the first phase of Brexit talks within days. The decision to target the UK over its commitment to security despite being seen as the bloc's leader on such issues was described as insensitive given the series of recent jihadist attacks in Britain. It came as Theresa May made a secret visit to Iraq where she pledged £10 million to help it fight IS terrorists. The Prime Minister has also spoken of her wish for a deal of unprecedented breadth and depth on defence as part of an EU divorce. In a further aggravating move, Mr. Barnier yesterday accused the government of failing to tell businesses the concrete truth about the negative economic effects of Brexit. The warning, including calls for companies to prepare for a no deal, will be seen as a thinly veiled dig over the refusal by Brexit Secretary David Davis to hand over sensitive documents on the impact of leaving the EU. Mr. Barnier made the comments during a speech in Germany after he briefed acting Chancellor Angela Merkel on developments in Brexit talks. Referring to the referendum, he said, "It was a decision that came after a series of attacks on European soil, committed by young people who grew up in Europe, in our countries. It was a decision that came 6 months after the French Minister of Defense issued a call for solidarity to all his European counterparts to join forces to fight the terrorism of Daesh, IS. He added, "Never had the need to be together, to protect ourselves together, to act together been so strong, so manifest. Yet rather than stay shoulder to shoulder with the Union, the British chose to be on their own again." Addressing a security conference in Berlin, Mr. Barnier also suggested that the election of Donald Trump was further reason for the UK to draw closer to the EU. Tory MP James Cleverly said, "I find myself having to disagree. It is outrageous that Barnier is trying to talk down the UK's role in combating Daesh, IS. Party colleague Andrew Bridgen added, "This is a denial of the truth as Europe relies on British intelligence." With remarks like these, it's easy to see why it has been difficult for David Davis to do a deal. Former UKIP leader Nigel Farage called the comments extraordinary. During his speech, Mr. Barnier told the UK it could no longer halt the unprecedented push for a defence union, which critics fear could lead to an EU army. "The construction of a Europe of defence has begun," he said. "Obviously, we will not wait for the United Kingdom to implement it, but when the time comes we will be ready to cooperate." He said it was logical that Britain would fall out of Brussels-backed security and defence arrangements such as Interpol. But he stressed the UK would maintain close ties through NATO. The negotiator said it was no secret that Britain had long opposed EU integration on defence but added, "The United Kingdom may not decide on the use of certain capacities under the European flag." In a separate address, Mr. Barnier threatened to expose the economic risks posed by Brexit. "I don't know if the whole truth has been explained to British businesses on the concrete consequences of Brexit," he said. "It is equally important to prepare for a no-deal scenario, implying a return to customs tariffs under WTO rules, not to mention increased border control procedures. The Prime Minister's official spokesman stressed that the UK plays a leading role in the fight against IS both in terms of online extremism and on the ground. He added, her determination is to continue cooperating with the EU, sharing information and standing together against IS and terrorism in all its forms. Mr. Bone said, this is extraordinary even by Eurocrat standards. I would much rather him lecturing the rest of the EU about what they are spending on defense. It is outrageous. The simple answer is that we don't have an EU defense force, thank God. NATO has kept the peace. The fact that we have come out of the EU makes no difference to that. This is an extraordinary attack on the UK. How can we negotiate with someone who says this kind of thing? A spokesman for Downing Street, responding to Mr. Barnier's speech, said, the UK continues to play a leading role in combating Daesh in terms of online and in the fight on the ground in Syria. The Prime Minister has been absolutely clear in our ongoing commitment to the EU's security.